Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to a brand new video. Now this is a Patreon suggested video, however it is changed slightly. So the original topic that I was asked to do for a video was 10 villains or monsters that I wanted to see return to Doctor Who. Now, if I'm being totally honest, I don't really want any to come back per se. There's one definitely on this list where I'm like, yeah, I really want them to come back. This list, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, is going to be more, I'm surprised they haven't come back yet in some shape or form. Whether it's a brief cameo, whether it's an episode dedicated to them. These are some of the monsters or villains from classic Who that I am surprised the modern era hasn't brought back yet. And again, it was difficult to think of because pretty much all the ones you would have thought have come back. Obviously, the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Sontarans, the Master, the Silurians, kind of. Ice Warriors, like the main ones you would have said have come back. For fuck's sake, even the Macra have come back. Badly, but they have come back. Anyway, let's get into it. So first and foremost, Drashigs. Now I don't know about anybody else, I actually really like Carnival of Monsters. I really do. It's one of my favourite Pertwee stories. I've no idea why. It's kind of a bad story in places because there's a whole subplot with these blue people that goes literally fucking nowhere. But at the same time, it's a really weird and fun Doctor Who story. And listen, if a story is a bit rubbish but it's fun, I can give it a free pass. And I think that's kind of how I see Carnival of Monsters. I enjoy it for what it is, and it is a lot of fun. And I think one of the aspects that makes it fun is the Drashig. Now for those of you who don't know, the Drashig are this big slug type thing that just will eat everything. Once they've got your scent, that's it. There is nothing that can stop them. The reason why I'm surprised they haven't come back yet is they're kind of the sort of villain I imagine New Who would have done. These big gigantic things that obviously the BBC would make out of CGI now. They obviously wouldn't be in a two-part story. They're obviously not going to be the most well-remembered or recognisable Doctor Who villain, but I feel like there is a story to be told with them still. Visually, I think there's a lot you can do with them, and I think the fear factor of these gigantic hungry things coming after you could add some real tension to a Doctor Who story. I imagine Russell would have been the one to have brought these back had they come back, more so than I can see Moffat wanting to bring them back or Chibnall. So it would have been interesting to see a 9th or 10th Doctor story with the Drashig, but obviously they haven't come back yet, and I'm surprised, especially from a marketing point of view. Like the toys of these things, I know that they already have done toys, but in the modern era, I mean, they sold a toy of fucking faceless Granny and Cassandra without a, well, Cassandra, just her frame. So either way, they've not come back, but they should have done. Now we're going to go to the 1980s and talk about what I would say is the last sort of well-known established Doctor Who monster. Sort of like, there's a list, isn't there? There's like the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Master. You sort of go down that list a bit, and you've got Sil. Sil, of course, is the horrible little slug man who appeared in the Colin Baker era in both Vengeance on Varos and in the Mind Warp section of Trial of a Time Lord. Now I've got to admit, Sil is a standout villain. I think the performance is brilliant. The laugh, like his little blah, 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 laugh, is really, really cool. He's just a little weasel, this slimy, quite literally, businessman who is just going to tread over anything and anyone because he wants to make a profit, and he's just a disgusting creature. You can abuse this in many different ways in terms of the story for Sil. He is in many ways a generic style villain because he's sort of like evil guy who is only focused on gains for himself. We've seen that in so many other different villains, not just in Doctor Who, just across the board. But I think Sil is so unique in his design and his performance and his portrayal that I really think there is another story with Sil that we can tell. And again, there is that list, and I feel like Sil, whilst he's nowhere near the top, he's around Ice Warrior, and they came back in like what, series 7? Maybe in the Capaldi era we could have got a Sil story. I'm thinking we should have done, personally. Sticking with the 80s, we're going to talk about the Mara. Now, Kinder, for those of you who don't know, is one of my favourite 5th Doctor stories because it is so fucking weird. It is such a visually interesting story, and I don't actually mind Snake Dance. I know a lot of people don't seem to like it. I actually quite like it for what it is. But the Mara, of course, is the snake that's in both Kinder and Snake Dance. Now again, snakes are something that a lot of people have fears of. I personally don't find them scary because I used to have pet snakes, but I understand why people do find them a little bit frightening, and to see this mind controlling snake thing essentially, that makes perfect sense. Again, I can see this in the Russell era, particularly in the David Tennant run of stories. This just feels like the sort of villain that Russell would have used and would have thrived with in his era. And again, because something like Kinder is so visually interesting, if you made a story in the vein of Kinder more than Snake Dance, then you could have had potentially a really unique and standout episode of Doctor Who. Kinder is unique all by itself, but imagine if they remade that in the modern era with improved technology and CGIs and, well, probably just CGI, let's face it, because I actually think the model work of the Mara in that story, Kinder, is very, very good. And again, I feel like Mara isn't like near the list, but probably after Syl, but the Mara's in and around sort of like big Doctor Who villains for me. Is that just me? It's probably just me. But either way, I'm surprised the Mara didn't come back, because it just feels, especially when the new series likes to do, well, Doctor Who in general likes to do the real world thing, turn it into a threat. With a snake, it's obviously a real world thing, but it's got a Doctor Who twist on it, you know, sort of like the Weeping Angels are statues and the Vashta Narada are shadows. Here's a big fucking snake that's going to come at you. How about that? Jumping back to the 1960s, and we are going to go with, again, a story that I think has so much potential in the modern era, and that is the Celestial Toymaker. Now, this is a character who I've always been interested in, because this is a villain who creates games, and people have to play these games, but they don't necessarily know all of the rules, they don't necessarily know the consequences, and the Celestial Toymaker is obviously in charge of these games, and he makes up the rules, and he can choose whether or not he tells people the rules, stuff like that. Again, such a visually interesting story. You can do anything from light-hearted and playful all the way to like borderline sore and everything in between. Those are the sort of games that you can do. You can gradually make them worse. You can make the games play on our companions and the Doctor's fears. You can do all sorts of stuff like that. The Celestial Toymaker, like I said before, is someone that I am very interested in as a character, because I think there's so much potential there. This is a villain that I'm surprised they didn't bring back later on. I know that there was a plan to do that in the Lost season that eventually ended up as Trial of a Time Lord. It never actually happened. But in that story they were gonna, what, go to Blackpool? Nah, fuck that. Do bigger, do more. I know I often say less is more, but I feel with a character like the Celestial Toymaker, just go balls out. Just have this weird childlike, again, maybe more so the childlike stuff, because that can be creepier. But either way, this guy who is controlling people, and if you lose the game, well, he gets to decide your fate. That could be a really interesting story. That could easily be a two-parter as well. Why? Why? Is it the casual racism that's in that story? I say casual, they do full on say the N-word, which is not a good idea. And then last but by no means least, this is the one villain that I truly want to come back, and again I'm very surprised that they haven't come back, and that is the Sea Devils. The Sea Devils, for those who don't know, is of course my favourite Jon Pertwee story. These are just awesome. They're weird fucking fish Silurians, and I actually prefer the Sea Devils to the Silurians. I think again you can do something a lot more interesting with the sea, and as someone who is a fan of nautical adventures, I would absolutely fucking eat that shit up. Hopefully if they did come back, the redesign of the Sea Devils wouldn't be as shit as the Silurians, because they may as well be a different species. Like, they look terrible. But the Sea Devils, I feel like they had a really strong outing in the 70s, and they didn't really do much in Warriors of the Deep. It's a shit story anyway, but they didn't really do much. They were just sort of like the soldiers, really. Whereas I want a proper story. Like, you can take the story to them as well. You know, the original story was more the Sea Devils coming on land. They're trying to proclaim the Earth. I mean, there was rumours of it with series 12, I think, of the Sea Devils coming back and it being a political story about, you know, filling up the oceans with crap. And listen, I don't really like on-the-nose political messages, but if anything, that would actually quite work. What if us humans are killing these creatures because we are dumping a load of oil and litter and all this sort of shite into the sea? They're coming out and wreaking their revenge. That could be an interesting story. And I love the voice as well, where it's kind of like a... I sounded nothing like them, but their voices sort of got this wispy croakiness to them. not like anything I just did. I love the fact that they wear nets as well. They literally wear fish nets. And again, on that list, Sea Devils are in and around Ice Warrior. Maybe before Ice Warrior. Those are my choices, guys, of the 5 villains that I think should have come back by now. But in the comments below, let me know what you think. Do you agree with my choices? What other villains do you think should have realistically come back by now? Whatever it is, let me know down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links, the place where this video was suggested, are in the descriptions down below. So if you would support me on any of those things, I would absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye.